There is a profound difference between reacting to life and responding to it, and yet in the speed and pressure of daily routines, these two modes of being often become indistinguishable. Reacting happens almost instantly, as if life presses a button and something in us is mechanically triggered. Responding, on the other hand, involves a space, a brief, intentional pause in which we see more clearly, choose more wisely, and act in a way that reflects who we wish to be, not merely what we feel in the moment. Understanding this difference is not a matter of abstract philosophy. It is a key that can transform relationships, careers, and our inner sense of dignity and peace. If this reflection resonates with you, please take a moment to subscribe, like this content, and leave a brief comment sharing your thoughts, so that more people can be reached by these ideas. When you react, your behavior is essentially governed by your most immediate impulses, emotions, and conditioned patterns. Someone criticizes you, and before you are even aware of it, you raise your voice, become defensive, or retreat in cold silence. A delay in traffic appears, and irritation rushes up. You honk, complain, and carry that frustration into the rest of your day. These reactions do not arise from deliberate choice. They are more like reflexes, shaped by past experiences, fears, and unexamined beliefs. They may provide a fleeting sense of release, but frequently they leave behind regret, tension, and damage that must be repaired later. Responding, by contrast, is an act of conscious authorship over your own life. To respond is to insert awareness between stimulus and action. It is to allow yourself a fraction of a second or a few minutes or even days before you decide what to say or do. In that small but essential interval, you consider not only what you feel but also what you value. You ask, sometimes wordlessly, what is truly needed here? Who do I want to be in this situation? In that question lies a shift from being pushed around by circumstances to quietly, steadily steering yourself according to your deepest principles. Modern psychology and neuroscience support this distinction. Rapid emotional reactions are strongly associated with the activity of structures such as the amygdala, which scans for threats and triggers fight, flight, or freeze responses. These mechanisms are vital for survival, but they are not always well suited to the subtleties of human relationships and contemporary challenges, where few situations are truly life-threatening. Responding, on the other hand, involves more engagement of the prefrontal cortex, the region of the brain associated with planning, reflection, and impulse control. When you pause, breathe, and reflect, you give this part of your brain time to participate, allowing your actions to be more aligned with long-term well-being and personal integrity. Consider a common everyday example. You receive an email that you perceive as unfair or disrespectful. A purely reactive mode might have you typing a sharp reply within seconds, hitting send with a sense of righteousness or wounded pride. Yet, hours later, you may reread your own message and feel a pang of embarrassment. You might think, this does not sound like the person I want to be. A responding mode would look different. Perhaps you notice your tension, close your eyes for a moment, breathe, and decide to draft a reply without sending it immediately. Later, once the initial heat has cooled, you reread your words and adjust your tone to be firm but respectful, clear but not inflammatory. The external situation may be similar, but the inner quality of your action is markedly different. This same distinction plays out in emotional conflicts within families and close relationships. A child speaks rudely, a partner criticizes something important to you, or a parent revisits an old pattern of control or judgment. Reacting often means meeting hurt with hurt, criticism with counter-criticism, or withdrawal with cold distance. Responding means recognizing the sting you feel, allowing it to be present without letting it fully dictate your behavior, and then choosing words and actions that honor your dignity and the dignity of the other person. It might involve setting a clear boundary in a calm tone rather than in a shout. It might involve saying, I need some time to think before we continue this conversation, instead of escalating the quarrel when emotions are at their peak. To respond rather than react is not to suppress or deny your emotions. On the contrary, it requires that you become more honest and intimate with them. Reactivity often springs from emotions that are not really seen or understood. They surge up from beneath the surface and take charge. Responding requires that you notice what is happening in your inner world. I feel anger. I feel fear. I feel hurt. By naming your feelings, you create a bit of distance from them, turning them from masters into signals. You understand that emotions carry important information, but they do not need to be the sole decision-makers in your life. There is a helpful image for this inner process. Imagine that your mind is like a busy sky filled with changing weather. Clouds moving, winds rising, storms forming and dissolving. Reactions arise when you mistake yourself for every piece of weather that passes through. When a stormy cloud of anger or anxiety appears, you believe that you are that storm and must act as it dictates. Responding begins when you realize that you are not the storm. You are more like the sky itself, spacious and stable enough to contain many kinds of weather without being destroyed by any of them. In that recognition, you discover the ability to observe your thoughts and emotions without being entirely controlled by them. This shift also transforms how you experience difficulties and setbacks. In a reactive life, obstacles are seen primarily as personal attacks, unjust interruptions, or confirmations of your worst fears. Someone else gets the promotion you wanted. You react with jealousy, bitterness, or self-contempt. A project fails. You conclude at once that you are not capable, not worthy, not meant to succeed. Responding introduces a more nuanced perspective. The same events can still hurt, but they become opportunities for inquiry and growth rather than final verdicts on your value. You might ask, what can I learn from this? What is within my control to improve? Where can I adjust my efforts or expectations? In this way, responding turns experiences into teachers rather than into sentences of despair. Even your relationship with time itself is shaped by whether you react or respond. When you are perpetually reactive, each day becomes a chain of emergencies. You are always late, rushed, and overwhelmed, pulled in every direction by notifications, demands, and impulses. You feel you have no space to think, reflect, or genuinely choose. Responding introduces intentionality into your schedule and your commitments. Instead of saying yes or no impulsively, you pause and consider your priorities, your energy, and your values. You recognize that every commitment is not only an act of generosity but also a responsibility, and so you answer more thoughtfully. Over time, this leads to a life that feels less chaotic and more coherent. The ability to respond rather than react is not something granted to a few fortunate individuals at birth. It is a human capacity that can be cultivated and strengthened with practice. One of the most fundamental practices is the simple act of pausing. This pause may be only a single breath taken consciously in the midst of a tense moment, or it may be a deliberate decision to delay an important conversation until you are calmer. In that pause, your nervous system can begin to settle, your perspective can widen, and your sense of choice can reappear. The pause is not a sign of weakness or indecision. It is an expression of inner leadership. Another essential element is clarity of values. When you are unsure of what truly matters to you, it becomes easier to be swept away by temporary emotions and external pressures. Take time to reflect on questions such as, what kind of person do I aspire to be? How do I want others to feel after they interact with me? What principles do I want to guide my decisions, even when they are difficult? When these values are clear, whether they include kindness, courage, honesty, responsibility, or another constellation of virtues, they become a compass. In moments of tension, you can refer back to them. If I truly value respect, how would that influence my next words? If I value integrity, what is the most truthful action I can take now? Life will never cease to present you with unexpected challenges. People will disappoint you, circumstances will change without your consent, and events will occur that you cannot predict or control. Reacting keeps you locked in a posture of constant defense, as if life were an adversary to be resisted or subdued. Responding allows you to meet life as a complex, often demanding, but ultimately meaningful field of engagement. Instead of striving to control every outcome, you focus on the one domain over which you genuinely have power, the quality of your own presence, choices, and actions. This realization is profoundly liberating. It does not guarantee comfort, but it does open the door to a more stable peace. In this gentle but powerful transition from reacting to responding, your sense of identity also evolves. Many of us unconsciously define ourselves by our past reactions. I am an angry person, I am impulsive, I am someone who always ruins relationships, or I never handle stress well. Yet these are descriptions of habits, not permanent facts. When you begin to respond more often, you start to see yourself differently. I am someone who can learn. I am capable of patience. I can express my needs without attacking others. Each responsive choice, however small, becomes a new thread in the tapestry of who you are becoming. This inner transformation does not demand perfection. You will still have days when you react in ways you regret, when your patience runs thin, or your fear speaks louder than your wisdom. The measure of growth is not the absence of errors, but the speed and humility with which you recognize them, make amends where needed, and return to the path of conscious response. Over time, your default settings shift. Situations that once provoked instant outbursts now meet with greater calm. Conversations that used to end in conflict now become opportunities for understanding or at least respectful disagreement. You discover that you are not merely surviving your life. You are gradually learning to live it with intention and grace. It is important to recognize that responding is not necessarily softer or more accommodating than reacting. Sometimes, your most considered response may be a firm no, a decisive boundary, or a bold change in direction. The difference lies not in the external firmness of the action, but in the inner place from which it arises. A reaction driven by fear or resentment tends to create more confusion and pain. A response rooted in clarity and respect, even if it is firm, tends to open a path toward greater honesty and long-term well-being. To respond is to act not only for the moment but also in consideration of the future you are helping to create, for yourself and for others. As you reflect on your own life, you might recall moments when you reacted and later wished you had responded differently. You might also remember moments when you did pause, think, and choose, and how those choices altered the course of events. Allow these memories to guide you gently, not as sources of shame, but as evidence that you have always possessed, at least in brief flashes, the capacity to respond. The invitation now is to nurture that capacity, to bring it more consistently into your days, so that little by little, the story of your life is written less by impulse and more by conscious intention. This, then, is the essence of the difference between reacting and responding to life. Reacting is automatic, conditioned, and often regretted. Responding is deliberate, reflective, and more deeply aligned with your values. Between these two ways of being stands a small but powerful space, the space of awareness and choice. To recognize and inhabit that space is to reclaim your authorship over your own existence. It is to move from living as a mere echo of circumstances to living as a quiet but determined voice of integrity, courage, and compassion. This second part continues the same reflection, focusing on how you can gradually develop the capacity to respond more often and more wisely to the unfolding events of your life. While the first part explored the conceptual difference between reacting and responding, this part turns more explicitly to practice, without losing sight of the deeper inspiration that underlies these ideas. The question now becomes not just what is the difference, but how can I begin to live that difference each day, in ways that are realistic and sustainable? A first practical step is to cultivate the habit of noticing. It may sound simple, but much of reactive living happens because we are not fully aware of what is occurring in our minds and bodies in real time. We become angry before we have noticed that irritation was building. We feel overwhelmed before we have realized that tension was gradually climbing. To respond, you must see. Begin by paying attention to the early signs of emotional escalation. The tightening of the jaw, the quickening of the breath, the agitation in your thoughts, the sudden narrowing of your attention. When you notice these signals, you are already stepping back from pure reactivity. You are moving from being completely inside the storm to observing that a storm is approaching. To strengthen this capacity for noticing, many people benefit from simple contemplative practices. Even a few minutes a day of sitting quietly, observing the movement of your breath and thoughts, can increase your awareness of inner shifts. The goal is not to empty your mind, but to become more familiar with it, to see how feelings and images arise, linger, and pass. Over time, this practice can transfer into your everyday life. You may find yourself in a difficult conversation and suddenly realize, I feel my chest tightening. I am beginning to react. That moment of recognition is precious. It gives you the option to slow down, to breathe, to postpone a decision, or to ask for a pause in the discussion. Breathing, though often taken for granted, is one of the most accessible tools for moving from reaction to response. When you are emotionally triggered, your breath tends to become shallow, fast, or even held unconsciously. This reinforces feelings of anxiety, anger, or panic. By deliberately slowing and deepening your breathing, even for 3 to 5 cycles, you send a signal of safety to your nervous system. This does not magically solve all problems, but it creates a physiological foundation for clearer thinking. In those few breaths, your capacity to access your values, your long-term perspective, and your empathy increases. It is a small action with disproportionately large effects. Another essential practice is the cultivation of reflective questions. Reactivity thrives in the absence of inquiry. It says, "I feel this, therefore it must be true and must be acted upon immediately." Responding introduces questions between feeling and action. When you are stirred by strong emotion, you can ask yourself, what exactly am I feeling right now? What story am I telling myself about this situation? Is that story completely accurate, or might there be other explanations? What result do I truly wish for? These questions do not need to become an endless inner debate. Rather, they serve as brief, clarifying lights in a moment of confusion. For example, imagine that a colleague seems distant and curt in a meeting. Your immediate reaction might be, "They are disrespecting me. They do not value my contribution." You feel hurt and defensive, and you might withdraw or respond sharply. A reflective question could intervene. Is it certain that this is about me? Could this person be tired, stressed, or preoccupied with something else? With that question, a new possibility opens. Instead of escalating tension, you might choose a gentle approach later. "You seemed a bit preoccupied today. I hope everything is all right." The same event, seen through a different lens, leads to entirely different outcomes for both people. Written reflection can also support this shift from reacting to responding. Journaling, even briefly at the end of the day, allows you to revisit moments when you were pleased with your responses and moments when you wish you had acted differently. Rather than using this time to criticize yourself, use it to observe patterns with curiosity. You might notice, for instance, that you tend to react most strongly when you feel disrespected, or when you fear being abandoned, or when you sense a loss of control. These patterns often have roots in past experiences, perhaps going back many years. Recognizing them can bring compassion for yourself and can also inspire you to prepare more wisely for situations that are likely to trigger you. The people with whom you spend your time also influence your ability to respond. Environments that constantly reward reactivity, through gossip, outrage, or perpetual crisis, make it harder to maintain calm, thoughtful presence. Seek out, as much as possible, relationships and communities that encourage reflection, respectful dialogue, and mutual growth. You might share your intention to respond more and react less with a trusted friend or family member, inviting them to support you, perhaps by gently reminding you of your commitment when they see you slipping into old patterns. When others know your aspirations, they can help hold you accountable in a spirit of kindness rather than judgment. It is equally important to recognize that responding does not mean tolerating mistreatment or injustice. In fact, a well-considered response can be more powerful and effective than an impulsive reaction when facing harmful behavior or unfair systems. Reacting in blind rage may express your pain, but can also undermine your ability to advocate for change in ways that are sustainable and persuasive. Responding allows you to channel your moral energy into actions that are thoughtful, organized, and grounded in a deep sense of dignity for yourself and others. You might choose to set clear limits, to seek support, to document events, or to engage in constructive dialogue, all while remaining anchored in your core values. As you grow in your ability to respond, you may notice a gradual change in the atmosphere of your inner life. There is often less constant turmoil, less mental replaying of past conversations or anticipating of conflicts that have not yet occurred. This does not mean that pain or sorrow vanish. Being human will always involve vulnerability to loss and disappointment. But there is an increasing sense of inner stability, as if you were standing on a more solid foundation. You trust yourself more, trust not that you will never err, but that you will be able to face whatever arises with as much wisdom and courage as you currently possess, and with a willingness to learn more. This inner stability has a quiet influence on others as well. When you respond rather than react, you become a calming presence in your family, workplace, and community. People feel safer around you because they sense that your words and actions are not dictated purely by sudden impulses. This does not mean that you are always gentle or that you agree with everyone, but that your disagreements are expressed in a way that does not humiliate or dehumanize. Over time, your example can encourage others to adopt a similar approach, creating interpersonal spaces where thoughtful dialogue becomes more natural than aggressive reaction. In the wider context of society, where public discourse is often dominated by outrage, speed, and oversimplification, the choice to respond rather than react takes on a broader significance. It becomes a small but meaningful contribution to a more humane culture. When you refuse to share unverified information simply because it provokes a strong emotional reaction, you are responding. When you listen to someone with whom you disagree, seeking first to understand before defending your own position, you are responding. These choices, repeated by many individuals, can gradually shift the tone of collective conversation toward greater depth, nuance, and respect. Of course, there will be times when your capacity to respond feels extremely limited. Fatigue, illness, grief, and stress can reduce the inner resources you have available. In such moments, the most compassionate response may be to recognize your own vulnerability and to take steps to care for yourself. This might mean resting, asking for help, or temporarily stepping back from situations that are likely to overwhelm you. Self-care is not a selfish retreat from responsibility. It is an acknowledgement that your ability to respond wisely depends partly on your physical, emotional, and mental well-being. When you honor your limits, you protect not only yourself but also the quality of your presence in the lives of others. It is also helpful to remember that progress in this area is often subtle and gradual. You may not notice dramatic changes from one day to the next, but over months and years, the cumulative effect of small, intentional choices can be remarkable. Where you once would have raised your voice, you now speak more calmly. Where you once would have given up in discouragement, you now persist a little longer or seek alternative paths. Where you once would have closed your heart in the face of pain, you now remain open just enough to stay connected and compassionate. These are not minor adjustments. They are the foundations of a different way of living. The journey from reacting to responding is, in many ways, a journey toward greater inner freedom. When you are governed mainly by reaction, your moods and behaviors are heavily dependent on external conditions. A compliment lifts you up disproportionately, while a criticism or setback devastates you. To respond is to recognize that, although circumstances will always influence you, they need not entirely define you. You begin to experience yourself as someone who can choose your stance toward what happens, to meet joy with gratitude rather than clinging, to meet pain with courage rather than complete collapse, to meet uncertainty with curiosity rather than paralyzing fear. In the end, to respond to life is to honor its seriousness and its beauty. It is to recognize that your days are finite and therefore precious, and that the way you inhabit each moment contributes to the larger story of who you are and what you bring to the world. You may not control how long you live or what exact events unfold along your path, but you do have a say in how you show up, again and again, in the face of whatever comes. This is not a small responsibility. It is a quiet form of greatness available to every human being, regardless of status, background, or circumstance. As you continue on this path, you might find it helpful to hold a simple intention at the beginning of each day. Today, I will do my best to respond rather than react. You may not succeed in every situation, but this intention can serve as a gentle guide. When you stumble, you can return to it without harsh self-judgment, remembering that growth is rarely linear. Each time you choose to pause, to breathe, to reflect, and then to act from a place of clarity and care, you strengthen the muscles of response. Over time, these muscles become part of your natural posture. In this way, your life gradually becomes less like a series of accidents and more like a work of art shaped by conscious choices. You will still encounter storms, but you will navigate them with increasing steadiness. You will still feel the full range of human emotions, but you will no longer be entirely defined by your most immediate reactions. Instead, you will live more and more from that deeper, quieter place within you where freedom, wisdom, and compassion reside. And in doing so, you will not only transform your own experience of life, but also offer those around you a living example of what it means to meet the world not as a mere echo of circumstances, but as a thoughtful, courageous, and responsible human being.